So, this episode was originally recorded a couple months ago, but given this is my wedding anniversary week, we decided this was the perfect time to publish it. So, Christina, happy 10 years. I love you. If you remember when we were reciting our vows, I alluded to something along the lines of having maybe 4 kids. And look, 10 years later, we have exactly 4 kids. So, I can't imagine life without you. And thank you for 10 wonderful years. Love you. Sorry if I got any details of our wedding wrong.
Hey everyone, this is Jun,
And I'm Daniel.
and we are Korean.
American.
Hey Daniel.
What's up to you?
So I just wanted to talk about weddings in general for this episode because a couple of days ago, I had a gathering with my former colleagues
Okay.
because one of my colleagues got married recently.
Mm-hmm.
And in Korea, there's a culture where they would give out invitation cards in person
Yeah.
while buying them a decent meal.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Yeah. And
You have to do it in person, right? You don't
you
just
have to
mail
do it
out.
in. There are two different types, right?
Okay.
Now they're the so-called mobile invitations
Oh,
where
yeah,
you
yeah.
just
Through Kakao.
throw
Yeah.
an invitation card through Kakao. But if you really feel that you're close to these people, you
Yeah.
would actually do that in person.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that this is a very standard and very cumbersome process of
Very cumbersome.
the wedding couple that
Yeah.
they have to go through this extensive series of buying meals for different groups. So I was invited to one of them,
Yeah.
and what they usually do is that they give you a physical printed out version of an invitation card
Mhm.
that usually has like the name of the bride and groom and the date and the venue,
Yeah.
and how to a small little map,
Sure.
simplified map that describes how to get to this venue and whatnot. It's very standardized. And the cultural consensus is that if you get treated with one of these meals and you got this card in person,
Yeah.
you are expected to attend this wedding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. That's heavy.
My rule of thumb is that if I get a mobile
Yeah.
invitation, I just don't go.
You don't go.
Yeah, usually.
Wow.
Because I feel like, okay, we're not that close enough for you to invest in that amount of time and effort to
Yeah.
actually meet me and give this invitation.
Even the way you describe it is
Yeah.
interesting to me, because in my mind it's like, I mean, I go to weddings I want to go to, and I
Oh,
don't go to weddings I don't want to go to. I mean, it's that simple.
oh yeah,
But
yeah.
you're saying, well, because they did this for me,
Yeah.
I'm expected or obligated to go.
Yeah.
Or because they didn't do this for me, I feel like, they almost don't deserve my presence at the
Yeah.
wedding, right?
Which leads us to one of the most important or interesting parts about Korean weddings of how they're very formulaic
Yeah.
and it's all about obligations.
Yeah. I will say, June, I've gone to one Korean wedding.
Yeah.
It was great because it was, my wife's cousin. We're close.
Mhm.
I'm happy I went.
Mhm.
But if I never have to go to another Korean wedding, I will not be too sad.
Yeah. How was it? Just can you describe it a little bit more?
I mean, we get there, right? It's at a wedding hall, I believe. There's people collecting the wedding gifts,
Mhm.
which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But, you give them money usually. You get ushered into this venue.
Mhm.
You have a very tight 30-minute window, I believe.
Yeah.
There's typical ceremony stuff. I think one person sing a song that I forget,
Yeah.
and then you get rushed out. And I'll never forget, as we were walking out of the 30-minute ceremony, they had already switched the picture. Like, my wife went up to take a picture of the couple photo,
Mhm.
which is at the entrance.
Yeah.
And she had her camera out taking a photo, and I was like, why are you taking a photo?
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I want to get a picture of, my cousin and her husband.
Mhm.
I was like, that's not your cousin and husband.
Because
They had already swapped out the photo
Yes,
for the next
exactly.
person in line.
Yeah.
It was a factory.
yeah.
After that, it's a big deal. Like, how many meal tickets do you get, right?
Mhm.
Because I think they paid for each one.
Yeah.
So we got our meal tickets, ate the food, and left.
Yeah.
And I think the bride and groom did come out. They did one outfit change. They came
Mhm.
out and went around
Yeah.
the tables once before we left.
Mhm.
But, we were out of there,
Yeah.
30 minutes after that. So the
Yes.
whole thing was like an hour most. It felt very impersonal, I will say.
It is.
And it took more time getting there, parking,
Yeah.
whatever getting set up than it did actually at the ceremony and the dinner at the buffet after. The food was okay, but I just felt like, again, if it weren't for family, for obligation, I got nothing out of this. I really, to me,
Yeah.
weddings need to be special,
Yeah.
very personal. You
Yeah.
know, our wedding was 6 hours long. Like it was just, it's a whole day thing.
Everything is so efficiently streamlined that even though I've never actually done a Korean wedding myself,
Yeah.
I can just exactly describe how it goes,
Yeah.
right? So as you described, there's always a very short sliver of time that you're dedicated to use the venue.
Yeah.
So you can never be late.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You can't be like fashionably 15 minutes late because it's already gonna be halfway through. So you always have to be there on time or 30 minutes early.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're a bit closer to the bride or the groom, you arrive 30 minutes early because there's a thing called 신부 대기실 where the bride is in kind of like this photo studio as almost like a mannequin.
Oh, and you can take photos with them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you just go in, take turns, everyone's in line, you take turns like as if you're taking a photo with a celebrity.
Yeah.
Or like a princess in Disney.
Yeah, got it.
Then you take photos and then 30 minutes in.
Really quickly, I didn't know that. So if we wanted any kind of alone time or any chance at a one-on-one
You
with
arrive
the
a bit
bride,
early.
you have to come early.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I forgot to mention the first thing that you do, you have to pay the 축의금, which is the money
Yeah.
that you give to bride or the groom.
Okay.
So usually there are two desks
Yeah.
as you arrive to the venue. One side is the groom's guest and the other side is the bride's guest.
Yeah.
So whichever side that you're invited from, you go to that desk and there's this person, almost like an accountant,
Yeah.
that would just receive your money, and then you write your name on the 방명록. What's the 방명록?
Guest book, I think.
Yeah, it's a guest book.
Yeah.
You write your name, so it's proof that you gave money for this person, right? And then the so-and-so accountant, which is usually a close family relative to that person, would give you a meal ticket.
Basically, you pay for your meal ticket.
You're basically just paying for a meal ticket. And there's we can talk a lot about how much you should be paying, but we'll get to that later. So after you get the meal ticket, now you have to decide whether you want to go straight for the meals or you want to watch the ceremony.
Oh, that's even a choice.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
If you're really hungry, you just want to get your meal first.
Yeah.
And you don't really care to watch the ceremony in person.
Yeah.
You just usually go to the meal venue first because they usually broadcast the ceremony from like some kind of display that's all over the meal venue.
So you could be watching the ceremony while eating your meal.
Yeah, but this also depends on what type of ceremony they do.
Okay.
There's one type which is the buffet type.
Okay.
There's the other type which is called 동시 예식 or something, which means that it's like a course. So in that case, the food venue is the wedding venue. So it's different where you can just sit there. But if it's a buffet thing, the food venue is somewhere else.
Okay.
So you decide, right? So for me personally, if I'm not that close to this person, I would just go straight to the food venue because you have to get in line after everything's done, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that I go to the food venue. I watch the ceremony, but I really don't actually. I just enjoy the food.
Yeah.
And then I go back to the venue because at the end of the ceremony, what happens is that you have to take a picture, a group picture.
Right. Yeah.
And you always have to take the group picture because other than the guest book, that's the only proof that you were there. So you go to take pictures and then after that, you're done. You just leave.
No cake, no nothing.
Yeah. So what happens is that if you go to the food venue after the ceremony is done, what the bride and the groom does is that they change to like an evening gown and they would go around the table and say hi and thank you for coming and all that. So that's pretty much it. And you're done in like, I guess in an hour. Yeah.
I mean, if you're parallelizing it by eating your meal during the ceremony, you're definitely done in an hour.
Yeah, way to optimize the already optimized ceremony. But it's not only about the ceremony itself, right? The entire process of wedding is very formulaic and very standardized. Everything's super streamlined.
It's very utilitarian, right?
It's very
I've heard the goal of the wedding is basically an accounting thing.
Yeah.
Like you have to make sure the money you've given at other people's weddings is
Yes.
returned to you.
Yeah. So most people, I'm pretty sure they have an Excel file
Yeah.
that they manage all the names and how much they paid,
Yeah.
right? And let's get a little bit into the amount of how much you should be,
I'm curious.
how much you should
Yeah.
pay.
Now I'm waiting to feel ashamed of how much we gave.
Yeah.
What are the tierings and how much should you give to different people based on, your relationship?
So the moment you start giving out money is when you become an adult, right?
Okay.
So when I was in college and like my friends who got married very early
Yeah.
was when I was still in college, and that was like early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
And it was 3만 won, but 30,000 won was standard,
Okay.
right? Now it's more like I feel like it's 10만 won,
$100.
100,000,
Yeah.
or like equivalent of $100. So there's definitely an inflation factor going on. And I think the inflation is directly influenced by the inflation of the cost of the wedding. And the rule of thumb is that you might want to think how much they're paying for the meal per person.
Yeah.
And you want to pay a little bit more than that.
Cover at least that.
Yeah. So it also depends on the venue. If the venue you feel like it's very fancy,
then it's going to be more expensive for you to eat there.
Yeah.
So you have to pay more.
Yeah. And we can talk more about the venue itself as well.
Yeah.
But usually the top tier venues in Korea are 5-star hotels.
Okay.
Right? If you get married in a 5-star hotel, yeah, it's like a statement. like you're very well off, right?
I mean, also, what's a typical wedding size? Like, I think in the US, 150 is maybe standard, 150 people.
Oh, I think it's definitely more than that.
In Korea?
Yeah. I'm not the person to ask.
Okay.
Sometimes, you know what happens is that if, let's say, one side of the married couples doesn't have a lot of friends to invite.
Yeah.
This sounds very horrible, but there are people who would pay for these people to come and sit.
Oh, you have to fill it in.
Yeah,
so you don't feel like shame. That
because you don't look bad. It's called like wedding alba.
Yeah, I've heard too. Like even for your bridesmaids and groomsmen, you can pay people to act on your behalf as your close friends.
Yeah. Also, there's very strictly dedicated rules. For instance, the MC of the wedding ceremony is usually the best friend of the groom, and the person who catches the bouquet is the closest friend of the bride that is not married.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have all the single ladies come up and you don't throw the bouquet blindfolded and whoever catches it.
No, it's just one person. It's just one person that's already chosen.
Wait, but they're not standing alone to catch it.
They're standing alone.
They're standing alone.
Yeah. So usually what happens is that it happens during the group photo session.
Yeah.
So while everyone's posing on the podium to get the group photo, the person who catches the bouquet comes in front of the stage. And then the bride would throw the bouquet, and then the person would catch it, and the background people in the background will clap.
Yeah.
And it's all in the photo.
So I don't know even in the US where this bouquet throwing custom comes from. But the whole thing is, whoever catches it will be the next person to get married. Like, have they adapted the American version of
and they
toss?
optimized it. Yeah.
It's like, who should get married next, right? Rather than like, who will get married next. I have a very funny story about that. I'll just throw in there. When we got married, again, we did the bouquet toss. I don't know, there were maybe 20 women waiting to catch it. And my wife's sister at the time, she wasn't married. So the bouquet was coming right at her. It wasn't prearranged, but it was coming right at her. She was waiting for it. And then our other friend, she runs out of nowhere, jumps over basically my sister-in-law, snatches the bouquet and starts going crazy dancing, right? Because it's fun. And we just had this picture of like her snatching the bouquet and my sister-in-law looking super like surprised, but also sad. It was just an awesome moment, but hilarious.
Okay, if someone does that at a Korean wedding,
they're like cut out of the friend group. Like they're no longer allowed.
I mean, they would just straight up just do it again. Anyways, there are also interesting customs of Korean weddings that you might not usually hear about.
Yeah.
If you've been to a funeral recently, you are expected not to attend the wedding.
Oh, wow.
Because you're dragging the bad luck into a good ceremony.
You just don't show up.
And everyone would understand.
That's crazy. You think this still remains true today?
Yes.
Okay.
And another thing, maybe this is true for American weddings as well, but or maybe not.
Yeah.
Women who are attending the wedding
Yeah.
should never wear white.
That's true. That's a faux pas.
Okay.
We don't do that in America as well. I'm curious, are there other like traditions or customs in Korean weddings that you're aware of? For example, when I got married, my mother-in-law, and their family, my wife's family bought me a nice suit. I also got a really nice watch, kind of like as a gift. And it felt like this was kind of standard.
Yeah.
Other things, I don't know, if the groom's family or the bride's family, is one expected to pay for, let's say, the ceremony or something else like that?
There's definitely something like that, which again is very formulaic.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not married myself, so I have to fact check. But what I know is that first the groom's family gives a lump of money to the bride's family.
Okay.
And then the bride's family would use half of that money to buy something expensive and give back to the groom's family.
Oh.
And usually it's in a form of like expensive electronic devices or furniture to furnish your
new home
your
together.
Yeah.
Got it.
And that's called 혼수 and 예단.
Okay.
I don't know which is which, but it's very formulaic and that it's like 50% of the money that you receive I use back or whatever. And then you go back and forth, and there are a lot of like complicated.
Okay.
Wait, did you do that because it's influenced by Korean culture? Or is that also?
I always thought of it as a Korean thing.
Yeah.
Like the bride's family buys something nice for the groom.
Yeah, and I think it's a
American
Korean
weddings.
culture.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a Korean thing that's been adapted into Korean Americans.
Oh, also, I forgot to mention, there's another part of the wedding ceremony in Korea which is called pyebaek.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just skip it.
So this is related to another topic I hope to talk about at some point.
Yeah.
But I feel like pyebaek is really popular amongst Korean Americans or like Korean non-Korean mixed couples.
Yeah.
Whereas in Korea, I heard no one does it anymore.
Oh, they don't do it anymore.
That's what I heard.
Oh, I didn't know.
The whole thing where like, the groom has to carry the wife on his back and like, do feats of strength, before the wedding, the night before the wedding.
Yeah.
And the whole catching chestnuts, means how many kids you're going to have, that thing.
Yeah.
But so, I heard it's not as common in Korea, but I don't know.
So what you do usually is after you have the more westernized wedding ceremony, the bride and groom changes to a more traditional Korean wedding gown.
Yeah.
And then they would have this like traditional setting about all the food and stuff. And they do very, I guess, symbolic wedding, what is that?
Rituals,
right? Where the parents would throw the dried daechu.
Yeah.
It's like
dates.
Yeah. And then the bride catches it with their skirt, right? Korean skirt.
Yeah.
Which means to like how many dates you catch means how many children that you would have.
Yeah. But would you say this is still done in Korean weddings, like 50-50 or more common than not?
I am not sure, and it's because that part of the ceremony is usually only between the family.
Okay.
Yeah. So even if it happened, I wouldn't know. Yeah. So I didn't know that they don't do it anymore. But it's very believable.
When I brought up to my parents, I wanted to do pyebaek. They laughed at me.
Why?
They're like, "Why would you do that? You're not Korean." I was so offended. I was like, "Appa,
oh wow,
I'm Korean." He was like, "You're not Korean."
So you don't have any Korean aspect in your.
We did not. No, I mean, I think if I remember right, no. I was gonna say my mother and mother-in-law were Hanboks, but I'm not even sure they did that. Oh wow, you really can't remember. I have to go back and look at pictures.
Oh wow,
we for sure did not do pyebaek or anything like that.
Oh,
but my sister-in-law who married a non-Korean, they did. Again, and it almost feels like Korean Americans have more pride in these old customs and traditions. Pride might be the wrong word. Curiosity, fascination, like desire to prove we're Korean.
Yeah.
Whereas in Korea, they don't. They're like, why would you do pyebaek? That's old-fashioned.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I also wanted to briefly talk about like what happens before the wedding, like the wedding prep. Also very streamlined.
Well, I'm curious too what the expectations are. So, for example, does the groom have to go to the wife's parents? Or I do believe the parents have to meet each other.
Oh, starting from that. Okay. So,
I don't know if we have
there's so many things that we have to talk about.
I haven't talked about American weddings yet either, so.
Okay. So I think the very beginning of the marriage starts from the families meeting together.
Yeah,
and there's a
like
term for that. It's called 상견례, where you're not only your family, sometimes your extended family meet together.
Oh wow.
Like maybe you would bring your grandmother or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like the first time each family meets together,
Yeah.
right? Because it's in traditional sense, it's a marriage is more about the merging of the families than two people, right? So they talk. Funny enough, a lot of the weddings get canceled after
That
the 상견례.
the families have
'Cause the
realized
families
it's not going to
don't
work out.
get along with each other.
Yeah, that's funny.
And if you go past the 상견례, now the actual process kicks off. It's almost like a kickoff meeting in like work term.
Yeah.
Like you're starting a project now, right?
Okay.
And then what you would do immediately, I think, is you reserve for the venue, because it's very difficult to reserve for a nice venue.
Yeah.
And if you do that, now the actual process starts. And I think the most standardized process is you reserve for a photography studio, and then the dress, and then the makeup.
Yeah.
And there's a word for that, call it 스드메.
Uh,
For the first word for studio, dress, makeup,
I see.
스드메.
Sudume.
So you do the 스드메, right? What else is there? So you take a wedding snapshot before even the wedding actually happens.
Yeah. There's an equivalent, I think, in the US, but
Yeah. And then after that, you go through, the process of like treating meals for your different social groups.
Oh, to give out the
Yeah.
invitations. Yeah.
And then the most interesting thing, when does the proposal happen?
Yeah, it should have already happened, no? Because
It should have already happened.
that's how you get engaged.
Yeah. In Korea, it's the opposite. After
No.
after everything's said and done,
Yeah.
right? Even after you buy meals and everything,
yeah.
you know where the wedding's happening,
Yeah.
reserve for the venue, and you have the dress and everything.
Then you propose?
Then you propose.
What?
It's more like a symbolic, like a technicality.
I see.
And I heard that these days, more recently, there's this. Personally, I feel like it's a grotesque culture
Yeah.
that the groom has to buy a luxury brand bag to propose.
Okay.
It's not a wedding ring anymore.
Yeah,
it's more like a
yeah.
ring and
And the bag.
a Louis Vuitton.
Oh, man.
There's almost like a cookie cutter framework for that.
Yeah.
You have the like the Chanel bag
Yeah.
in the middle, and then flowers around it.
Yeah.
And like, will you marry me?
Yeah.
And it has to happen like on like a rooftop, like luxury, expensive restaurant that like oversees like the urban landscape.
And it's all for the gram, right? It's also you can take beautiful pictures.
It's
and
for
show
the,
off
it's
that
for the grab.
This was my proposal.
It's like I want to say it's like 90% for the grab.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird culture that I don't know where it came from. I think personally that's the weirdest part of Korean wedding culture.
That is definitely the most shocking to me, that the proposal, scene or happens after all the details have been arranged.
Yeah, it's just an event.
So I think the term is yakon, like I'm engaged.
Yeah.
Before 결혼, right, married. So when is someone technically, can they say like, oh, I'm engaged, and when does that happen? And like, because for me that happens after someone proposes and they say yes, right?
There used to be a culture of 약혼식, like a engagement party.
Yeah.
Back in the days when I was little, it was common people go through 약혼식, especially for the more wealthy family. But I don't think it exists anymore.
Interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah. I don't think there's a concept of engaged
anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, oh, we're planning to get married.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think, I don't know. Should I talk about American weddings now?
Yeah. Definitely.
I learned a lot though. I learned that you can come early if you do want to get some one-on-one time with the bride.
Yes.
You can parallelize the eating of the meal with the ceremony if you don't have to attend in person.
Yeah.
But you have to make sure to get back in time for the photo. Yeah, wedding hacks. You have to make sure to get back in time for the photo. The reviewer there.
Yeah.
And I learned that the proposal happens after all the wedding details.
Yes.
But okay, I mean, in the US, I don't even know where to start. But I will say with invitations, it's similar in that you send a physical, invitation by mail to someone. I think in the US, you're so spread out. You can't reasonably give them to them in person, but you mail it to them.
Yeah.
These days I don't get invited to many weddings anymore. Most of my friends are married, maybe with kids. But, there was a time period of about 10 years, which when anyone asked me what my address was, my physical mail address, I would give it to them. and immediately follow up with, "Oh, when's the wedding?" It's like, how did you know? I was like, that's the only reason someone would ask me for my physical mail address anymore. Now it's Christmas cards. There's a Christmas card tradition thing, but for a while, a good 10 years of my life, I would say 95% of the time someone asked me for my address, they wanted to send me a wedding invitation.
Yeah, yeah.
I will say there's definitely no expectation. Like if you get invited, I think in the US, people understand it's hard to travel, it's hard to make it, right? So I felt really zero obligation to go to a wedding I was invited for. Of course, I was honored to be invited. I would try to attend most of the time, but yeah, definitely no feeling of obligation for me.
But isn't it a bigger deal in the US if you're invited to a wedding than in Korea?
Interesting. I don't know. I do feel in Korea it's more out of like there's your standard list of okay, your parents invite whether it's church friends or company people or whatever. In the US, it felt more like you could invite who you wanted to. So in that sense, yeah, like the bride and groom together discussed who they wanted their wedding, and you made that cut.
Yeah.
So it is kind of an honor. But at the same time, it's like again, people just understand we're busy, we're spread out. Like you might not be able to pay the money to travel, stay at a hotel to come to our wedding, right?
Because it's also a lot of dedication compared to Korea.
Exactly. It's a big deal usually, especially if you're out of town. It's a big deal to even travel for the wedding, right? And maybe that plays in a bit to the gifts too, which is, you know, if I'm spending X $100 to fly, X $100 on a hotel.
Oh, so you're paying for all
I'm paying for my own things.
Are there any occasion where the bride and groom pay for your flight?
I can imagine if they're incredibly wealthy.
Oh, so it's not common.
Or if the guest is incredibly close, right? Then they might offer to pay for it.
Oh, I see.
But otherwise, no, it's not expected.
Because from my perspective, I hear these stories about like maybe these celebrities flying people out to like Hawaii and then getting married. So that's not
its own thing. Destination weddings.
So it's not common.
Are destination weddings in Korea common? I imagine not, because it's mostly for the family.
Yeah, it's not common. I've seen some people getting married in Hawaii, but it's definitely not a common thing. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's common in the US, but it's not uncommon.
So if it were to be a destination wedding, would they pay for your flight?
No, everyone pays their own. Yeah.
Oh, so it's definitely a lot of dedication.
It is to attend. Yeah. And maybe that's why people understand if they can't make it. Right? So let's see. For that reason though, you RSVPing like répondez s'il vous plaît, right? RSVPing to a wedding invite is really important. Like exactly who and how many people it's right? Because they're holding your spot.
I see.
You know, if you can't go, they want to invite someone else, and they need to know ahead of time so that second person has the time to plan to make the wedding, right? So,
and I saw these pictures of American weddings where you would have your nameplate.
Oh, nameplate for sure. That's standard. So anyway, that's the invitation, and then you RSVP. There's I think maybe one of the more controversial things with American weddings is, can you bring a +1? So if, let's say I only know one of my best friends from college, but I've never met his girlfriend, is the girlfriend allowed to come with them? I think that's one. And then two is, are children allowed?
Oh.
So these days, right, some are adult only, or are they going to bring their kids, right?
Oh,
because, these venues, and I'll talk about the venues in a second, you have to make a spot for every single head there, right? And, maybe kids cost less, but you're still taking up a place at the table. And so those are generally the two big variables in a wedding. Are +1s allowed?
I see.
And are kids allowed? And, my wife and I, our rule was always, well, if we knew you guys as a couple, if we've ever met the significant other, they would be allowed.
Okay.
Some people say if you're not married, no. Right? Even that extreme. Like even if you've been dating someone for 4 years, it's like, sorry, we've never met your +1. We don't really care if they're at our wedding. I think if you have a principle, people understand. Yeah. Weddings, ultimately, this is, I think, a big difference. Weddings are mostly about the two people getting married in the US, right? And what they want and who they want and whatever. In Korea, it feels more about the family and obligation and whatever, right? It's more just, let's just check the check marks.
I see. I really want to know more about the prepping. But before that, I also want to go into the gifts, wedding gifts, because I know for a fact that you don't exchange money in the States, right?
Okay, there's two things. So one is the married couple typically set up a registry.
A registry.
And what that is you go to some, department store or some online service and you say, here are the 10 things I want, right? Not 10, usually more, like 20, 30 things. For, maybe to start a married life or to furnish our house. Usually it's like kitchen stuff and, things like that. and people can either buy things directly off the registry.
Wait, but how do you know where you're registered at? Like, how do you know where to
That
go?
will usually be included on the invitation. Yeah, we are registered at X, or if not included in the invitation, it's followed up in email or something.
So is it usually on things that you can buy often online?
Yeah, almost all online. Yeah,
I see. I see. But how do you know which one is already bought by someone else?
It'll show you. Yeah, once someone buys it through the website.
Oh, there's a website.
It's all bought through the website. Yeah.
Oh, so there's a platform that
there's a whole
provides this
industry
service.
around wedding and registries and whatever, right?
Interesting.
So, the other thing people will do is there's a honey fund, it's called. So you'll donate towards the honeymoon. So I don't know if that's typical in Korea. After a couple gets married, they take 1 to 2 weeks off at least to travel on their honeymoon.
They do. It's not usually up to 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's its own separate thing. But yeah, so the honey fund is where you can donate to the honeymoon. But even that, there's platforms where you can this is for this activity or this is for this thing.
Interesting.
And at least growing up, I think in Asian cultures, cash is king. But I would say typically you think of cash as it's meaningless. It's kind of an impersonal gift.
Yeah.
And so you try not to give cash. Whereas everyone practically knows cash is the best, right? Like they can use it for whatever they want. But I would agree, even receiving cash, I was always grateful for it, but it just felt so impersonal.
Yeah.
I would much rather you buy me a $50 set of plates than giving me $100 cash, right? Because those plates are meaningful.
Really?
Yeah. At least for me.
What if it's something that you really didn't need at all?
Well, the thing is, you put it on the registry to begin with.
Oh,
right?
So that's different.
Yeah, but
I
if
see.
you didn't need it, you can always return it. Right?
Interesting.
But as I grow older, I also know hey, let's just cut the formality. I'll just give cash now as gifts.
Wait, is there drama in what kind of items that you register? If this person is asking for something so expensive.
Yeah. Sometimes there is. I think, where you set up your registry, certain places are more expensive than others. Right?
Yeah.
And then the items you put on it, it's wow, they really want that $500 espresso machine.
Yeah, I can imagine something like that.
There is some drama and maybe some backtalk, but in general, it's it's their wedding. They get to do what they want. Who am I to judge them?
I see.
In general, I would say give how much you can give, depending on how close you are and what your means are. Right?
Interesting.
Oh, we didn't talk about that. After the wedding, you have to write thank you cards. For attending our wedding, for the gift, etc. So such a chore, honestly. It's fun, right? But it's also such a chore. I think our thank you cards might have taken up to a year after our wedding for us to get through it all. Is that something that happens?
There is an equivalent in Korea, but usually, so it's called 담례품.
Yeah.
It's thank you for coming to the wedding.
Yeah.
Usually it's in a form of delicate dessert or 떡.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's something perishable.
I'm not sure. I might be wrong, but most of the time I think it's only for colleagues.
Okay.
Because you see them after, because they're coming back from the honeymoon, right? And thank you. I came back from the honeymoon, and these are the 떡s for people who came to my wedding.
Got it. Okay, there's a lot to get through. Let me try to jam through the actual ceremony, maybe details.
Can I ask you one thing? Yeah. So if I'm imagining this American wedding, you flew out to some other destination, right?
Yeah.
Over the weekend, and everyone flew into that town, right?
Yes.
Is there something happening after the wedding? Because you're all in this some city together. Yeah. Is there?
So there's a few things going on. First of all, they'll have recommended hotels, and maybe you get a favorable rate on it. Because you're telling the hotel we're going to take up 30 rooms this weekend, right? Can you give us a better rate on that? So there's that too. Where do you stay? So the people, your family, your closest friends, they get together before the wedding. And then typically after the wedding, I'd say the morning breakfast or brunch, there's another event for all the friends and family to come to. Completely optional. You can choose to come or not. But usually, again, the bride and groom will make an appearance there. And the thinking is before they go off on their honeymoon, they'll stop by, see their friends and family for brunch, and then they'll go off on their honeymoon.
So they don't stay there for the entire time.
No. Yeah, I say typically if you are flying in, let's say fly in on a Friday, the wedding's on a Saturday, and you just fly out on Sunday.
Cool.
Yeah. So
I see.
I think this idea of a weekend trip in the US maybe is quite common. I imagine it's common in Korea too, though. Weekend trip to Busan or
for a wedding?
Where I guess for weddings, no, right?
If it's in Busan and you're living in Seoul, you're probably not expected to come.
You're exempt from attending. 1.5 hour train ride is too far.
Anyways,
That's interesting.
we're not going through this in chronological order. Also, very curious about the prepping
Yeah.
and the things that happen before the.
That is very similar, I think.
Yeah.
In the US, I would say the date and the venue, which are tied together, right, is the place you get married free on the date you want to get married. Once you lock those in, 50% done.
Okay.
Right. And then typically the vendor will have their preferred caterers for the food, right? But the other big cost, wedding dress. I'd say typically the bride goes with their mother maybe and goes wedding dress shopping.
I see. What comes to mind is I heard that these days, if you go to wedding dress studios, it's all like their intellectual property, the looks of the wedding dresses. So you're not allowed to take pictures of the bride trying out the dress.
Different dresses.
So I heard that these days the role of the groom is to sketch.
Wow, what it looks like.
Yeah, sketch what it looks like. But anyways, so do you buy the wedding dress?
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big decision point whether you buy or rent. I'd say it's, I don't know, pretty 50-50 split. I think another tradition might be if you of course, you want to wear after retailoring your mother's wedding dress. It gets passed down through generations. That can often be symbolic and meaningful. And I think if you choose to buy it, you're really buying it for that reason. Like, this is not just something for that day. I want to pass it down to my daughters in the future, maybe. Or just as something to remember this day by, as a keepsake. An expensive one, right? Because wedding dresses can be quite expensive.
Did you buy your wedding dress?
I think we rented. Yeah.
You rented.
Actually, from my wife grew up in LA. Her parents were still there. So actually a lot of the things we just got in LA and brought up. My in-laws brought it up with them when they came up for a wedding.
I see.
So ours was maybe not your most typical, because we definitely had some of that, Korean American LA influence.
I see.
But yeah, once the venue, the date, and then you have to figure out the food options. So this is kind of a nice perk. You get to do tastings with all the different caterers.
Oh yeah, that happens too in Korea.
Okay, that's great. Then you have to figure out the cake. Oh, also in your wedding invite, in the response, you have to specify what food you want. Typically, there's like a steak, a chicken, a seafood, a vegan, something like that. And so your name card has a little sticker representing what kind of food you ordered.
Like on the plane.
Exactly.
Dietary restrictions.
But there's also a favor, right? So if it could be like a bottle opener, it could be a little bell, like a little trinket. It could be food like a chocolate. I think some cool ones are like a little individual like plant thing that you can plant the seed and grow it over time.
What's a favor? What?
It's just something that every guest gets.
It's a little. Oh, it's a little gift.
Like a little gift for every Cindy.
What about so a lot of U.S. wedding culture I learned from like dramas or
ask away.
What about the band?
Yes, another big decision point. So do you want to do live music or do you want to have a DJ?
Yeah.
And so we had a DJ. It was just the DJ that, when I got married, all my friends were getting married. So I guess there was a popular DJ that DJ'd most of our weddings.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's its own thing. For each of these roles, you have to interview with them and find the right person. They do an intake, which is like, what's your music preferences, any vetoes, any must-haves for the music.
Interesting.
And this is all important because, again, so the day of the wedding, guests come about 30-minute buffer. So you can be up to like 30 minutes late for the start at the venue. And that's where the ceremony is held. The ceremony is typically about 30 minutes long, so that's not that different. Once the ceremony's done, there's a cocktail hour, which is usually at the venue for food. And these are not always the same. And in fact, most of the time they're different. So people like to get married in a church or something maybe more meaningful. And then the reception could be, up to 30 minutes away. Sometimes it's at the same place. But at the reception, there's typically what's called a cocktail hour. So for an hour, they pass out hors d'oeuvres, which are like finger foods. There might be champagne, start the drinks. And then there's actual dinner, the course meal, which is typically, appetizer, entree, and dessert. At some point, there'll be, cake cutting, which is a big moment. But after that, basically, the venue is yours for typically, I'd say 2 to 4 hours after that for just dancing and partying and music.
Wait, can I briefly mention about the cake cutting?
Okay, yeah.
Because, in Korea, the cake cutting thing.
Is it a thing? I've never seen it.
Sometimes they do it.
Okay.
But it's like this lavish, three-tiered cake. But the only top tier, like the small portion of it, is the actual cake.
What?
Yeah, and the
No.
one or two big ones are just like
It's just like
plastic.
plastic?
Yeah, I
Like
just
it's
wonder if it's the same in the
no, I
States.
think in the US, the whole cake is, you know, you have to serve all your guests your
That's
cake.
so good. I always thought it's so fake, right?
So the guests don't even get to eat that beautiful cake.
They don't.
It's just that top piece for the couple.
It's just for the cutting.
Cutting.
I don't even know if they
Oh.
eat it.
There's another tradition where you're supposed to freeze part of your wedding cake
Yeah.
and eat it on your 1 year anniversary.
Okay,
or
that's.
something.
I think that's much better.
We didn't do that, but we
Yeah.
tried, but it didn't taste very good.
Yeah, it's just always so sad to me that I know that
It's a fake cake.
the most beautiful part
Yeah.
is just fake.
Got it. No. I think the whole cake is usually, you know, you pay for the whole cake.
Okay, good. Anyways,
Yeah,
sorry,
but, you
sorry
know-
to interrupt.
No. The reason why the DJ and live music stuff is important is because it really is a party, right? Maybe because it's so hard for people to get there too.
Yeah.
But, you know, let's say ceremony starts at 4,
Mhm.
done by 5, you know, cocktail hour till 6,
Mhm.
dinner starts at 6, done by 8. And then 8 to 10, 8 to 12, like that's, you're renting the venue, you're having music, people are partying. I guess another big decision point is what alcohol and how much alcohol. And is it open bar, which is like unlimited alcohol?
Mhm.
If so, is it premium alcohol? Like how,
Mm.
are we just talking like really cheap alcohol?
Do you have
Is
to
it-
customize everything on your own, or do you have like a
So
wedding
there's a
planner?
yes, there's a concept of a wedding planner,
Yeah.
which, you know, knows all the right vendors and can get you the best deals and
Mhm.
like guide the bride and groom through the process.
Yeah.
Hugely important, really clutch. I'd say weddings are up to you how much you want to customize it.
Mhm.
And so for some people, they don't really care that much. It'll be very quick.
Mhm.
It really depends what you're optimizing for. If you want to be more budget conscious, right? You'll just do beer and wine. You won't
Mhm.
have spirits, they're called, like hard liquors.
Mhm.
First of all, I think in most couples, it's more about the bride. Like they get to
Mhm.
make most of the decisions.
Mhm.
And the groom might interject or veto here and there.
I see.
But I'd say I felt like a lot of wedding planning for us, and it's, to be fair, you said a lot of Korean couples get split after the parents meet and families meet.
Yes.
I would assume a lot of American weddings get canceled or avoided during the wedding planning process.
Oh yeah, that happens in
It's
Korea.
so
as well.
stressful.
Yeah, and
it's
very
so much
stressful.
to do. But I would say too, it's about saying no. And I
Mhm.
think like, you know, it's down to like the table settings. Like
Mhm.
what types of forks do you want? What
Mhm.
napkins do you want?
Ugh.
What's the color theme? Right? Another big cost typically is flowers.
Mhm.
Like, you know, you can spend as much or as little as you want on flowers. There's no limit because you can always have more and it could be more beautiful,
Mhm.
whatever. So yeah, I think for me it was mostly about saying no. But you know, what
Saying no to the wedding planner?
no, just saying no, like, you know, if you have 10 different things to choose from for the type of chair,
Oh,
at the
saying no
table.
to the options.
like we don't care about these 5. Maybe this one's the best, but just pick one. It doesn't matter. at
Yeah,
that
yeah.
point. But I do think the biggest difference, at least at our wedding, yeah, I think we had 200 people. Only 20 guests were from our parents.
Mm.
And I do think we were on the extreme end where
Oh.
I think most Asian American or Korean American weddings are a lot more kind of
Family.
parents oriented.
Oh, I was gonna ask. Yeah,
Yeah, like I think a lot of weddings, the parents get to choose up to 50% of the
Yeah,
guest
yeah.
list, right?
because I can imagine in Korean weddings, like most of the people, I don't want to say most, but a lot of the people are people who you don't even know, because it's like your extended family,
Yeah.
right?
How much, like, if you had to put a percentage to it, what would you guess? How many guests at a wedding in Korea are there because the bride and groom want them to be, or because, you know, the parents chose them or wanted them to be there?
Again, I'm not the person to say this, but I want to say half.
Yeah, at least half.
Yeah,
right?
out of obligation.
Yeah, I would say that resonates with me.
Yeah,
But our wedding was more like, you know, 10 to 20% obligation, at 80% just our friends.
That's
so
good.
we felt really lucky.
yeah.
You know, my parents aren't that, let's say, traditional in a sense. They really wanted to respect, I think, the Western
Mm.
traditions and customs. So
Well, also, I wanted to, again, from my knowledge that I get from American pop culture.
yeah.
What about the first dance and the
Yes.
music?
Yeah.
Is that a big deal?
Yeah. I think, okay, let me, I'll get there. So I skipped this part. After the ceremony, there's the entrance.
Mhm.
So after the ceremony, after cocktail hour, when people are seated to start their course meal,
Mhm.
the bridal party enters,
Mm.
and they usually have to, have some sort of theme to their entrance.
Sorry, what's a bridal party?
Oh, bridal party is the bridegroom and the groomsmen and the bridesmaids.
Oh, so that concept doesn't exist in Korean
Oh,
wedding culture.
yeah. So you basically have to choose a best man,
Mhm.
and they have certain roles and responsibilities.
Mhm.
The best man has to hold the ring, the wedding ring, until the actual wedding ceremony.
Oh,
And then
interesting.
the best man gives the groom the ring to
Mm.
put on the wife's, the bride's finger, right?
Mm.
That's one responsibility.
I see.
Oh, another thing that is huge that I did not hear you mention, it's the bachelor party and bachelorette party.
Oh.
Have you heard of that?
I did hear of it, and I was gonna ask,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, I don't think it actually exists
In Korea, right?
in Korea. No.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the bridal party. And so,
Sometimes they do.
okay.
These days, bridal shower.
Okay. Well, shower's different. These
Oh,
are all
it's different. Okay, sorry.
No. It's crazy. I would say the only important thing here typically is that they match the number,
Mm.
right? So if I have 4 best friends, my
Mhm.
wife should also pick 4 people.
Oh,
Or
interesting.
if my wife has 5 bridesmaids, I should pick 5 groomsmen.
And do they have to like? Is it a rule that they all have to be single, or can
No
they be?
rule at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, they can be married.
They can be married, absolutely. And family typically is included, but doesn't have to be
Mhm.
by any means.
Yeah.
So for example, my brother was my best man.
Mm.
But yeah, that's the bridal party.
Mm.
And so the obligation, I think, is, anything the bride or groom needs for sure leading up to it.
Mm.
But more than anything, the best man and the maid of honor, they call it. And I think if the maid of honor is married, they might call it the matron of honor.
Okay.
But maid or matron of honor, they have to plan and execute the bachelor and bachelorette party, which is like, at some point before the wedding, it's kind of your last hurrah as a single person.
I see.
So,
Do they all have to know each other? Is that common?
No, definitely not. But they get to know each other at the
Okay.
bachelor party.
I see.
For the bachelor.
Because I saw pictures of them having matching dresses.
Oh, so that's its own thing. So the bridesmaids and the groomsmen do have they coordinate.
Mm.
And sometimes it's just wear a dress of this color.
Mm.
Sometimes it's wear exactly this dress,
Mhm.
right? And or it's like wear anything you want, just don't wear white. So it varies. Groomsmen will typically all pick like a color.
Mhm.
And again, the big decision is, do you wear a suit or a tuxedo?
I see.
But yeah, they at least coordinate on color and theme. And so you should look cohesive and presentable in the pictures. Yeah.
And so their main role is to conduct the bachelor party.
role.
Do they happen on the same day?
No, it can be totally. They're
Okay.
independent. It could happen by coincidence,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have to. Again, lots of drama and maybe lots of couples break up because of what happens at the
I see.
bachelor and bachelorette party.
Yeah.
But yeah,
What usually happens in the bachelor party?
Dude, you can't.
I think this is the meaty part of this podcast that I was saving up for the last bit.
No, I think it's really up to every person's different.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what happened on your bachelor
Oh,
party?
mine was very tame. We just, had some nice whiskey. We had a really nice steak dinner. Just like did some gambling and drinking, and yeah, that was it.
Interesting. So is it totally a custom that you have to do this, or
Totally accustomed. Yeah, I think everyone. It can be as tame as like, going hiking and playing board games together, right?
Mhm.
Or smoking cigars and whiskey and
Mhm.
going bowling or
Mhm.
top golf. But
Mhm.
having some sort of last party with the people that are meaningful to you,
Mhm.
I think that's almost always expected to be done.
I see.
Yeah. And in a sense, it's as I get older, I realize it's just an excuse to make people feel obligated
Mm-hmm.
to come and to get together.
I
right?
see.
As we get older more and more, it's so hard to find those times and reasons to like, whether it's inconveniencing yourself, spending money you don't have to travel to be with someone in person. But I think, like you said, it's such an honor to be, included as a groomsman or a bridesmaid, to be invited to a wedding, right? That you make an effort to go.
Mm.
But US is so big. It's so hard to find those occasions to meet up in person.
Mhm.
Whereas in Korea, you're always like at most 2 hours away by train from someone else in the country.
I personally have so many questions, right? Like you didn't even
There's so much
cover
more we could
your
talk about,
proposal, right?
Yeah.
And like what's a bridal shower and
Oh,
all
yeah.
that. We're almost at time.
But what final things should we talk about? I do think, again, Western weddings are really focused on the couple, what they want,
Mhm.
highly customizable. But yeah, I think nowhere near to the extent is it optimized and as efficient as it is in Korea.
This was trending a couple of years ago. It's called small wedding, where you would just invite. I guess it's more of a American take,
Yeah.
where you just invite your very close relatives and close friends
Yeah.
and just rent out a small venue like a
Any venue, right?
yeah, like a cafe.
Yeah,
even.
yeah.
And then just do a small. But what I heard is that it's even more expensive to do a small wedding than to do the cookie cutter big
Really?
one
Yeah.
because everything's so optimized for the latter.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd say, again, anything from it's very common to do something, let's say, in someone's backyard, let's say, it's really meaningful,
Yeah.
super budget friendly, right? That's one extreme.
Mm.
But yeah, you could even, the other extreme is like a destination wedding, which is everyone flies to this place.
Yeah.
You have to stay at this hotel and you do a wedding there. And I've been to everything in between. But yeah, most commonly you get, the ceremony is at a church. And then the reception is probably at, anywhere, like a hotel, a restaurant. We did ours at a kind of a garden in this winery in Napa, which is really nice. But yeah, just anywhere that's beautiful, I think, and or meaningful to the couple.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it's also very common in Korea to get married in a church. Yeah.
I don't know if there's any last things I wanted to include, but I will say personally, it would have been nice thinking about like if societally it were, if it seemed okay for me to just do this cookie cutter, hyper optimized Korean wedding, it honestly sounds much less stressful.
It is, I think. Yeah.
Like I don't know if I would have wanted to go down that route because your wedding date in America is like one of the most important or memorable days of your life.
Yeah.
But it certainly would have been easier.
Yeah. A lot of my friends, they go into the wedding process thinking that I don't want to do the cookie cutter wedding. I want it to be something special, but then end up doing the cookie cutter wedding because it's so optimized and it's so stress free. Yeah.
But I will say, thinking back on it, is the last time all of my most important friends and family were gathered in person. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, so it was 10 years ago. Yeah, and it's just a good excuse to get people together. And I would not trade anything, even all that stress and time and money and whatever. So I really enjoyed it. Jude, have you been to an American wedding?
No, I almost I was invited when I was in Korea.
Yeah.
But it was
It's too hard to go.
too hard to fly all the way to the States. And
All right. Well, that concludes our episode on weddings. There's a lot more we could have covered. But yeah, if you have any thoughts, comments, follow-ups, please reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram at Korean American Podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for this episode.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Jim,
Yeah.
look at my Instagram feed.
Show me
Do you see anything?
your Instagram feed. There are a lot of wedding photos.
Too fake. We have to sap some other intro.
Okay. Well, what were you expecting?
Well, I thought you would say like, oh, is it common? Or is everyone getting married?
By the way, I don't want to edit this out.
No, we should edit for sure.
Really?
100%.
I think this is funny.